Morning, this is Brian. Today is Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. I'm here along the San Diego River Trail, which is just over there, just on a little social path just off of it, near Mast Park in Santee. And it's time for a spotlight on vines video. Yes, spotlight on vines. This is my first ever spotlight on vines video, because today I want to focus on a vine that can be very common and quite lushly growing in wetter places, and that is this plant here. This is desert wild grape, or Southern California wild grape, or just Southern California grape. This is Vitis girdiana. Vitis girdiana is a woody vine in the grape family, the Vitaceae, and is characterized by these extremely sprawling, climbing, bunching, flopping over stems that could take over a whole area. So these plants get very long stems that can just about surmount any obstacle, whether it's just sprawling along the ground, clambering through shrubs, climbing up and over trees. This plant is very versatile, very rampant, and is quite the awesome native here in Southern California. Typically, I see this plant at lower elevations. I don't know exactly how high it grows. I haven't seen it very high up in the mountains, like at 6,000 feet, but I could do a little extra research. But I've never seen it high up in the mountains, like above 6,000 feet. But I'll take a look at that, because I'll take a look into that a little bit more in case other people have. But Vitis girdiana is characterized by these very palmately lobed leaves, as you can see here. Very palmately lobed, with secondary lobing too. And they're characterized by having a slightly fuzzy underside. Usually the younger leaves tend to have more of that whitish color underneath them. So the leaves and the stems are a little on the fuzzy side. You can see there, the little whitish color is the hairs and fuzziness of the leaf. So the other thing about this plant is it is winter-deciduous, so it sheds all of its leaves in autumn. It's leafless in winter and leaves out in the spring months. So during the winter, this plant will be literally a bunch of sprawling twigs and sticks all over the place. And yes, this is a true grape. This is, again, in the genus Vitis, V-I-T-I-S. So it is related to the agricultural grapes and does have edible fruit as such. So in the late spring, they will form these little clusters of flowers, really small, kind of greenish. I'm trying to find a good example of an old flower cluster. Kind of greenish flowers in spring, and give way to these fruits called grapes. Let's see, I'll try to find a good example here. I know I've seen some on some of the plants, but as you can see here, as I'm looking for a good example, this plant sprawls all over the ground, creeps, crawls, climbs, and clambers. Let's see if I can find some up close flowers, and probably more likely to see the fruits developing. I know I saw some over here. Here we go. They come in these little clusters, kind of greenish clusters, and eventually they're going to form these small grapes. Typically smaller than your agricultural grapes, because this is a wild grape, so it hasn't been hybridized and tested and grafted and all this other fun stuff to make these large succulent grapes that you get in your grocery store. But they are grapes, and they will ripen a purplish color in later summer and early fall, and they are edible. But you just got to be aware they got seeds in them, so you'll probably be they're not your seedless grapes you get in the grocery store. I've never actually tried one, but they're supposed to be pretty good. And it's just a pleasure to see this plant again. And there we go, got some more grapes developing right here. So this is quite an interesting plant. So what helps this plant do what it does? In other words, what helps the plant climb and sprawl and ascend up these trees and shrubs that grow in this jungle like thicket? It's these little wiry things called tendrils. You can see that little curly figure right there. That's like an old dried up tendril. Tendrils help them clasp on to other plants and grow up and around and over them. I'm going to try to find a fresher example of a tendril. Usually they put more energy into larger tendrils when they're actually on a plant. But you can see the tendrils even grow on themselves, so they'll climb over themselves as well. It's a very lush plant found in these riparian corridors. In other words, along wet locations near rivers, creeks, streams, ponds, and lakes where there's a lot of moisture in the soil. And here it has not rained in months, and the soil here is wet. It's very damp. So this plant likes the riparian sections where there's a lot of access to moisture, and that's why this place looks like a jungle. It kind of looks like one because of all the lavish growth here. Common plants associated with desert wild grape are Fremont cottonwoods and other poplar species in the genus Populus. We got willows in the genus Salix, typical waterside plants. This is Gooding's black willow, Salix goodingi, and other riparian plants like Anamophis californica, Yerba mansa, and other riparian trees, also growing closer to the water. So again, I mentioned that this is a winter-deciduous vine, and it's a woody-based vine, so it has a persistent stem that can last for years and decades. And fall color, I've seen this plant in fall color once or twice before. It's usually kind of a yellowish color, but some people have noted it possibly turning red as well. I might have to do a follow-up spotlight in the fall when the leaves are changing on this plant. So most likely going to be yellow, like most of our other riparian species, like the cottonwoods and willows. But people have noted it turning red in autumn as well, so that could be a possibility. In fact, Fred M. Roberts and Robert Allen's Wildflowers of Orange County in the Santa Ana Mountains are some of the ones that noted it turning red as well. So there'll be something for me to keep an eye out come this fall when I explore these riparian sections, trying to get fall color footage. So here's the bark. Here's the bark. So these are the woody stems of Vitis girdiana. So it's kind of a lightish brown color, kind of stringy and furrowed. It looks like it peels away a little bit, so there's a little bit of peeling in it. So, I mean, overall, it's quite a luxuriant plant if you have enough room for it to grow and water to sustain it, because it probably will not do too well outside of riparian zones, not to my knowledge. I would imagine it probably has some form of drought tolerance, but definitely not as much as your coastal sage scrub and chaparral plants. That's for certain, because I don't see it growing in sage scrub and chaparral. So I think it's quite an interesting looking plant. It's definitely one of those plants that make things look very luxuriant and lush. And it's quite cool to actually have our own native species of grape growing here in Southern California. There's another species that doesn't grow this far south. It's called Vitis californica, the California wild grape. I have not seen that plant before, and when I finally see it, of course, I will be having this camera ready to do a spotlight video on it. Of course, you already know how that goes. But here you have it. Vitis girdiana, desert wild grape. Check the description for the full range of this plant, and hopefully I can do a follow-up video this autumn when the leaves are changing, so I can see if they do get some red on them. Like I said, I've seen them before in Trabuco Canyon in Orange County before the holy fire ripped through and gutted everything, and it was mostly like a soft yellow, soft kind of palish yellow color, kind of draped over all the other deciduous trees and stuff like that. So it does have some fall color, but let me see if I can find it with some red fall color, which would be really neat because it's one of my favorite fall colors. So there you have it, Vitis girdiana, Southern California or desert grape, live here from near Mast Park in Santee. Thanks for watching my spotlight video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.